Good morning. Welcome to the Trey Olds Radio Show. This is Trey Olds. Thank you for joining us. Join us in a minute when we introduce our special guest this morning. Thank you. Okay, my first question to you is, how did you get started in the entertainment business? How did you get started in the career you do? How did you get started?
Well, this actually goes way back to when I was actually just a youngster, probably in elementary school. I always loved radio. I always walked around with a radio under my arm, listening to the music of the day. And when I say of the day, I'm talking of the 50s. Mm-hmm. So you can see I'm an old guy. But I had I used to get a book, Popular Electronics, I think it was called. And they gave a schematic on how to build a transmitter. It was an AM transmitter. I think FM back in those days wasn't too highly regarded. So I got a couple of friends together. We put this thing together and started my own radio station in my bedroom in a place called Stony Creek, Ontario, Canada. Mm-hmm. And we ran that for a little while. Then I discovered, in talking to people more knowledgeable than I, that you could boost the power with a linear amplifier and get rid of that variable tuner and get a crystal that would put you right on the frequency. So we ordered a crystal from a company in Iowa, and we put it all together, and away we went until the Department of Communications paid us a visit, tore everything apart, and told us if we ever did it again, we'd be going to jail. And I don't look real good in stripes, so I thought, okay, that'll put an end to that. And I signed up for a radio communications course at a local community college in Hamilton. And after taking that, I worked at a number of radio stations. I've actually worked at 8 different radio stations, and these days now there's radio stations still carrying some of my old shows all over Canada and the United States. So, the internet has certainly made it a smaller place. But my biggest radio station, the one I enjoyed the most was FM 108. It's 107.9 in back in those days, it was in a place called Burlington. Now they've moved to Hamilton, but they're 50,000 watts. They boom into Buffalo. I think you get them as far as Erie, Pennsylvania, into Toronto. Mm-hmm. So they were a big station. We were the first radio station back in those days to revive the music of the 50s and 60s. Oh, wow. Nobody else was doing it back then, so we started doing it. And our audience got to be so large that other radio stations started switching their format to doing 50s and 60s music as well. And so that was really how I got to be well known, because I would weasel my way back into the dressing rooms of a lot of these stars that would be on these oldies circuits, and get to talk to them. They'd do a little promo for me, and went from there.
Yeah. I've been doing my radio show for 6 years, and I love doing it. It's fun. Radio is fun to do.
I can tell. You've got the passion, and that's you have to love it, because those who are in the business know that it's not the greatest paying job in the world. So you've got to do it out of love.
Yeah, and this business isn't for everybody. It takes. Not everyone is fit to be in the entertainment business or radio. Cause
I'll tell you, I was actually very shy. Probably still am. But you get into that little studio with the microphone, and you don't see. We used to. I would have an audience of 50 to 100,000 people at the time. So, but you don't see that, so it's meaningless. You're just in a little room by yourself, and away you go. Yeah. So it's a good way to sort of appear to be far more outgoing than I really was. You see me in person, I probably wouldn't say more than 2 words.
Yeah, I used to be a lot shy, but now I've kind of talked more. I kind of grown out of that shyness.
Well, I guess you have to have a way to overcome that deficiency, if you want to call it that. I mean, we're all different. Everybody's different, and I mean, if we were all the same, then most of us would be redundant, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My next question is, what is the most challenging part or the most difficult part being in radio or entertainment business? For you, what do you find the most challenging?
That is easy. The most difficult part of the radio business is getting a job in radio. It isn't easy. I was lucky. We had a little radio station in my school, and one of the teachers there, he kind of took a liking to the show that I did, and he got me to interview Petula Clark. You're obviously too young to remember who she was, but he picked me up and took me to Toronto, and I got to go and interview her. This is just a little high school radio station at the time, and so that really fired up the passion for radio in me, even back in those days. So I guess I've always had it.
Yeah. Do you still do radio? Are you retired, or do you still do it?
I do it more. Well, yeah, I do. I actually was a part owner in a radio station in Caledonia, which is just a little bit south of Hamilton. It's called the Grand 92.9, and we sold that I guess 2004. And since then, I've been doing a couple of internet radio stations. They've asked me to do some voice tracking for them. So I guess I'm still involved in that way, but that's not the same as it was back in the days when we queue up the records, dig through the pile of carts for the commercials and the jingles, and log everything. We didn't have computers back in those days. You had to write down the time that you played every commercial, when it started, when it ended. Because I was in Canada, our government requires you to play a certain percentage of Canadian content, which I really resented. But you do what you have to do to keep your license, and so we had to log every song that we played and what components of the song were Canadian. It had to have 2 out of 4 components. They got I don't know whether you've ever seen the labels, but back in those days, it was MAPL, which is the music was written by a Canadian and performed by a Canadian. The artist was obviously the artist had to be Canadian. The P was the record was produced in Canada, and the L, what the heck was the L? I can't even remember now. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. But you had to have 2 of those 4 components had to be Canadian for it to qualify and get you credit. But we were doing 50s and 60s, so we were lucky. We got away with only 1 component. Then they changed the rule back, I think, in the late 70s or 80s. Early 80s to make it 2 components. So they just keep making it more and more difficult.
Yeah. Technology these days can be difficult too, as well, but it also can be a good thing, with the radio.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You don't have to lug. I used to walk around with a couple of milk crates full of records every week when I would do the radio show, and it got to be heavy, and I'm filing them away afterwards and getting the next show ready, and there was a lot of work. Now it's all computerized. I could have a whole record library. We used to have a huge room of multi layers of shelving full of records back in those days at the radio station. Now you could probably have more records, more songs on a little thumb drive that you stick in your pocket.
Yeah. I've been doing my show for 6 years. In the first 2 years, I played music, and that was fun. Then I switched to interviewing people. But music was fun to do because I played all kinds of music, jazz, rock and roll, some of the music you played, I like old music. It was much better than some of this music today.
I think so, but most people my age would think so. But I think the kids don't agree. I've got kids of my own. I've got a son that's 48 years old, so they wouldn't agree with the music I play. But I guess every generation has their own. My grandfather would have me sit down and I'd listen to his 78s, and he was telling me how great it was, and I'm listening thinking, oh man, get me out of here.
Yeah. Well, the music back then was much more classic, much more real. It just seemed more genuine. But I like music,
Well, it was more fun. Yeah, it was more fun. Now I find some of the music of today somewhat offensive.
Yeah.
That it didn't. They would even ban a song, "Wake Up Little Susie" by the Everly Brothers. That would be banned because that implied that there was some, illicit love affair going on in the background. Nowadays they don't just hint around to anything. They just come right out and say it.
Yeah.
And using words that we wouldn't even have been allowed to say back in those days.
Yeah. Some of the music today I really don't call music because some of it's not.
Yeah, but you know what? As negative as I would express my dislike for that music, if I'm saying it in a crowd of people, I'll have a group of them take quite the opposite view. So there is no right or wrong. It's just what you personally enjoy, and that's I like the 50s and 60s myself.
Yeah, I do too. My next question.
Good.
Yeah. My next question is, do you have any advice for people who want to get started in radio, who want to get started in the career you chose?
Well, the career that I chose doesn't exist today. There's so few jobs because now, it's all voice track. But back then, we would have a huge staff. We'd have a news department. We'd have people in the station 24 hours a day. Now, it's all voice track. You go in there and do a morning show, and you can do the voice for the all-night show at the same time. And, that doesn't really exist, the career that I chose. And it was exciting. You're listening to the music. You don't speak, and then it gets played back 10 minutes later. When you're speaking, it's live. It's being transmitted the moment you're saying it. So, it was exciting. You get right into the music. The people are calling up. You're working hard, but you love every minute of it. Now, you sit in front of a computer and you've got a little window that tells you exactly how long you can speak, and then the commercial fires up, or the jingle, or the next song. So I wouldn't. I don't know that I really want to do it anymore. If I was a youngster looking for a career, this wouldn't be my choice. Back then, you'd walk around and people would they'd act like you were some kind of a star, even though you weren't. But can we have your autograph and get my picture taken with you? Now you say you work in radio, they say, well, what's the matter? Walmart not hiring?
Yeah. But it is fun to do, to me, I love doing it. It's fun. Because I've always loved radio and entertainment, and radio was the first opportunity I got, so it's been fun.
Well, enjoy every minute of it, because it's an ever-changing world.
Yeah. Well, Burt, thank you for talking to me, and it's been a pleasure hearing about your career, and thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate you contacting me. I'm surprised you'd even have heard of me. You're down in Mississippi, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's a state I've never had the pleasure of visiting, but I will someday. My goal is to see all 50 states. I've been to most of them, but Mississippi's one that I haven't had the opportunity to grace my presence in that state. So You know,